democratic. You go to any religious mission, any order, it's picked clean. There was no Swachh Bharat Abhiyan in that ashram, but it is clean. Why? Because there the debate is not about rights, it's about duties. An IAS officer goes there, he takes out a broom and cleans his area because Guru said it. Supra-mental state, supra-spiritual state is not an impossibility, but we never bothered to contemplate on that. We found an easy way in democratic system. I am not at all suggesting democratic systems are bad, best available systems. I quoted Nehru. But the best is yet to be invented. Gandhi took it forward. Gandhi, when he was asked the same question about what will be your idea about independent India, his simple answer was it will be Ram Rajya. In fact, in Harijan he writes, he explains, by Ram Rajya, I don't mean a theocratic state. What I mean is the weakest shall have as much power as the strongest. That is my definition of Ram Rajya. No, Gandhi, in 1946, when the United Nations decided to create an organization for human rights, United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC, one letter was sent to 50 eminent people in the world, asking them to recommend what all fundamental rights should be made a part of the International Human Rights Charter. One such letter goes to Nehru. Nehru replies that, see, I am very busy. I have become the Prime Minister. He became the Prime Minister of interim government. So I don't have time for all these things. But I have a fellow in my country who has a lot of time, but who has a lot of ideas about everything under the sun. And he forwards this letter to Gandhi. No, Gandhi was not sitting idle. Gandhi was also busy in Naukali and elsewhere. But Gandhi finds time in one of his train journeys to write a reply. He replies to UNHRC people that, look, my mother told me that as a person, I don't have any rights. Now, it's a revolutionary statement to say that you don't have rights. But Gandhi then subsequently writes, my mother always used to tell me that you have certain duties to perform. Once you perform your duties, rights of all others are protected. Look how beautifully he put it. We do our duty, right of everybody is protected. You go into an ashram, you take the broom in your hands, you clean up the ashram, everybody will have a happy environment. Everybody's right is protected. That's how Gandhi introduces a very quintessential Indian idea. It's another matter. UNHRC did not take that idea. But the tragedy is, Indian Constitution also did not take it. In 1950, the first version of Indian Constitution, when it was brought before us, it did not have any section on fundamental duties. It only had a section on fundamental rights. Fundamental duties section came in 1976. Totally different debate. And that section is so funny that fundamental rights are have to be implemented, compulsory. Fundamental duties are non-judiciable. Even if you don't follow those duties, nobody is going to punish you. But Gandhi's argument was that you have to build a system which has duties and rights also. Right, duty, dual discourse has to be developed. We have so many. Ambedkar writes to Gandhi in 1930s that the most fundamental thing, more important than India's freedom from Britishers, was Hindu social reform. Work for it. So the social reform was a major discourse under Ambedkar. Then he strove to bring Hindu Code Bill. He was not allowed to do that. It's a totally different issue. But that social reform aspect was important political discourse that was needed in India. So on many of these topics, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya talked about integral humanism. He did not have enough time to elaborate on that. We continue to pay lip sympathy, even to this day. But if this is integral humanism, how would it apply to our system, our reality? How do you, as Professor Rekha Ma'am's earlier observation, how do you take certain good aspects of it into the current system? How do you integrate integral humanism with the current system? Have you invested on that? Some investment happened. I'm not saying completely nothing has happened. Some Antyodaya idea was taken, some happened. But we need to invest much more on that. For that to happen, first of all, you should come out of that romanticism, ready to be out of the box thinkers. As academics, you have freedom to be out of the box. Politicians cannot be. Politicians have to pay lip sympathy to whatever is there. But as academics, who asks you? Be out of the box. Work on some of these things that can be totally different to what is existing today. First of all, we have to give up this mindset that whatever is what we are following is the best one. No, not necessarily. The available best one probably for us. But when communism came, when it went to China, Mao religiously tried to follow it. But when Deng Xiaoping's rule came in 1980, Deng made very, very important qualification to communism. He said, I will have communism with Chinese characteristic. Can there be democracy with Indian characteristic? So there was this Iran experiment. We may not like it. We may say that it is bad. But Iran experimented with a model for 40 years. Even now it is under that system. We may or may not like it. It's our own preference, our own opinion it can be. But Vilayat-e-Faqih, a model they experimented. You know, in 12th century, in 9th century, the 12th Imam of the Shias one day disappeared. He started guiding through his disciples. After some time the disciples died. The Shias started believing that the Imam is alive, he is protected by God, one day he would resurface. Until that resurrection happens, they decided we will be guided not by any king, not by any political system, but Vilayat-e-Faqih, meaning the rule of an Islamic jurist. Now one may say it is theocracy. Mine is democracy, they are theocracy. We may say that. But that Vilayat-e-Faqih as a model worked there for 40 years. They experimented with it. I'm not at all suggesting you should adopt it from Iran. But have we that courage to think out of the box that no, this political system can become like this, can change so much. I mentioned about Deendayal Upadhyaya's integral humanism. Deendayal Upadhyaya in integral humanism makes a very, very important observation. He says, India, of course, we need democracy. But he says two things should happen. One, decentralization should happen. You know, I mentioned about Dharmarajya concept where village was an important unit, Nagara was an important unit, Sabha and Nagara were important units. Then they are talking about decentralization. But the second thing he said was democracy as rule of the majority should end once elections are over. A very important observation. He says majority only to elect the government. Once you are elected, it has to be consensus. Now, is it possible in today's parliamentary system? Can you run the government through consensus? It is possible, but to do that, you have to make certain changes. What are those changes? We are not ready to invest our effort on it. So what I'm trying to suggest is, as academics, if you want to decolonize, it's not enough to blame the colonizers. It's important to come up with our own ideas in line with our wisdom, our thinking. As I said, Westerners believe